They know that the fire isn't the end, it's the beginning. It is the place where illusions burn away and what's real is revealed. In the deepest moments of discomfort, when life feels like it's breaking you apart, the Stoic sees something else, a forge, a place where strength is shaped, not shattered. Hardship is not evidence of weakness. It is proof of proximity to growth, a threshold that must be crossed not with resistance, but with readiness. The trial that sears your skin and bends your will is the very crucible where the false falls away and only the essential remains. You step forward not because the path is clear, but because your spirit demands movement. You breathe not because fear has left, but because courage compels you to keep going. You choose what's hard, not because you enjoy suffering, but because you've learned it is the path that purifies, reveals, sharpens. To burn is not to fail, it is to become. The Stoic does not flinch from pain, for they understand that comfort often deceives. It wears the mask of peace while it quietly poisons the soul with stagnation. The easy path promises safety, but delivers dependency. It numbs growth, smooths every edge, softens the will. But the fire, the fire, it refuses to let you sleepwalk through your own life. It wakes you, shakes you, demands from you everything that is real. It does not destroy, it defines. You walk into it not because you are reckless, but because you've trained for this moment, rehearsed adversity in your mind long before it arrived. You've envisioned the fracture point not to avoid it, but to meet it with readiness. You've strengthened your principles like steel, hardened your breath into rhythm, carved clarity from chaos. And when the flame arrives, you don't collapse. You breathe, you step, you burn, and you keep walking. Not because you enjoy the heat, but because you believe in what it reveals. On the other side is not just endurance, it's identity. The truth of who you are, uncovered, unmasked, undeniable. You are not the titles you lost in the fire, not the things stripped away. You are what endured, what could not be touched, what could not be destroyed, the real you. Fire becomes your mirror, showing you not what the world sees, but what lies beneath it all. The trials leave you scarred, yes, but those scars become symbols of becoming. They whisper not of ruin, but of resilience. The Stoic walks forward carrying not the burden of pain, but the clarity of having faced it. Their strength is not abstract. It is carved into their breath, their stance, their silence. When others avoid the flame, the Stoic enters, and from the other side they emerge, not unmarked, but transformed, not unshaken, but awake. And when it's over, they don't speak loudly of what they've survived. They simply carry the quiet force of one who has stared into the fire and did not flinch, of one who did not bow, of one who became more, not despite the burn, but because of it. There will be times when the noise around you grows louder, urging you to conform, to bend, to drift quietly along with the crowd. But the Stoic knows there's a deeper discipline, the discipline to stand alone. When the current flows in one direction and your soul whispers another, that's not just a crossroads, it's a reckoning. The crowd might offer comfort, applause, belonging, but it often asks for a price that's far too high, your truth. The Stoic has no interest in the illusion of unity, if it costs them their integrity. They know that real strength is not always loud, not always praised. Sometimes it's silent, sometimes it's misunderstood, and sometimes it earns only resistance. But that resistance is not a sign to retreat. It is confirmation that you are choosing what is right over what is easy. It's easy to feel brave when you're surrounded by affirmation, but it's a different kind of strength to keep showing up when no one is clapping, when your convictions make you the outlier, when your integrity demands solitude. The Stoic understands that being rooted in your own values may mean being disconnected from others, but it also means being connected to something deeper, something immovable. They are not fed by agreement, they are nourished by alignment. Their strength isn't drawn from crowds, it's drawn from clarity. That clarity becomes a shield against the approval addiction. It becomes armor, not to isolate, but to protect the sacred fire within. They don't dilute who they are to fit in, they refine who they are to stand firm. And in that solitude, they are not lonely, they are free. Because to stand alone is not to be without, it is to be whole. It is to look in the mirror and know that you did not betray yourself. It is to walk into a room without shrinking, without bending, without needing applause to justify your stance. That kind of presence can't be taught through words. It is built in silence, in the unseen choices, in the moments when no one is watching. It's found in the decision to speak truthfully when silence would be easier, to act rightly when it costs you status, to uphold your standard when no one applauds your discipline. Those small moments stack upon each other, quietly forging a person who cannot be moved by pressure, who does not waver with trends, who walks into storms with steady breath and unwavering eyes. The Stoic becomes a quiet force, unshaken by applause and undiminished by rejection. Not above others, but anchored in something deeper. They understand that popularity is fleeting, but principle is forever. And when they speak, it's not with arrogance, but with calm authority. Because their voice is no longer tied to being heard, it is tied to truth. Even when misunderstood, even when met with silence, they do not fold. They do not seek to convince the world. They seek only to remain faithful to what they know is right. And in doing so, they carry a power not born from being followed, but from being unwavering. In a world that bends for attention, the Stoic stands, not for rebellion, but for reverence. Not to be seen, but to be true. That is a strength no applause can give, and no rejection can take. In a world that never pauses, where distraction is disguised as productivity and constant movement is mistaken for progress, the Stoic chooses stillness, not as an escape, but as a stance. Stillness is not passivity. It is not weakness. It is power, controlled and precise. It is the discipline to remain calm when the world spins in chaos. It is the courage to wait when others rush. It is the restraint to listen when provoked, to observe before reacting, to think before speaking. The Stoic does not move because the world demands it. They move when it is time. And that difference, subtle but profound, is what grants them mastery over their lives. Stillness does not mean the absence of motion. It means the absence of wasted motion. It is action born from principle, not panic. It is clarity untouched by noise. It is the eye of the storm, not because the storm isn't real, but because the Stoic has found something stronger within. In stillness, they do not escape reality. They face it more fully. They sift through the noise and find the truth. They know that reactivity is not strength, it is surrender. And they do not surrender. They do not hand over their peace to headlines or insults or fleeting emotions. They stand firm, even when provoked, especially when provoked. They have trained for this. In the quiet hours, in early mornings, where only breath and thought remain, they have sharpened their minds. In long walks where each step is a question, a meditation, a return to what matters, they have built this strength. Not with noise, but with awareness. Not with force, but with focus. Stillness is not the enemy of progress. It is its foundation. It is in stillness that they decide what is worth fighting for and what is not. It is in stillness that they see clearly, through ego, through urgency, through the lies the world wraps in comfort. The Stoic does not move with the herd. They move with intent, because they know that each action plants something, either chaos or clarity, either distraction or direction. Stillness is what gives them space to choose, the space between what happens and what they do next. That space is their freedom, their strength, their sovereignty. They do not fill it with immediate reaction. They fill it with awareness. And that awareness becomes command. Not command over others, but over themselves. And self-command, true, quiet, unshakable self-command, is the beginning of all power. When others panic, the Stoic pauses. When others rush, the Stoic roots. When others flinch, the Stoic breathes. Stillness is not their weakness, it is their weapon. They do not fight with noise, they fight with clarity. They do not scream to be heard, they speak to be understood. They do not chase every opportunity, they choose the ones aligned with their soul. This discipline, to be still in a world that moves without thinking, is the sign of one who knows their strength. It is the calm of one who no longer needs to prove. It is the confidence of one who no longer needs to please. It is the peace of one who has found the still point within, and in finding it, has become unshakable. The Stoic understands the immense power hidden in the pause. the sacred space between stimulus and response. That space is not emptiness. It is where character is chosen, where dignity is preserved, where the self is reclaimed. To delay your reaction is not weakness, it is mastery. The untrained mind reacts. It lashes out, it grasps, it surrenders itself to the whims of anger, fear, pride, or impulse. But the trained mind, the stoic mind, responds. Not in haste, but with intention. Not with urgency, but with understanding. In that pause, the stoic asks, is this worthy of my energy? Does this move me closer to who I want to be? What part of me is speaking, the ego or the truth? They do not answer every insult. They do not chase every spark of offense. They do not let the loudest emotion lead. Instead, they sit in the silence and listen. They breathe before acting. They observe before assuming. They let the first wave of emotion wash over them without clinging to it. Because they know the cost of reacting too quickly. The bridges burned, the peace disturbed, the regret that lingers after the storm passes. They have learned that not every battle is worth their presence. Some moments are not obstacles, they are tests. Tests of restraint, tests of emotional intelligence, tests of patience. And the Stoic passes them not by force, but by choosing the higher road. Even when no one is watching, especially when no one is watching. They understand that silence can be a shield, that a calm breath can be a louder statement than a raised voice, that wisdom often whispers when emotion screams. The Stoics' power is not in dominating others, it is in directing themselves. In that pause, they regain their strength, they reclaim their path, they break the cycle of reaction. That small hesitation becomes their revolution, a quiet defiance against chaos. It is in that space that they become who they are. Not reactive, not impulsive, but deliberate, rooted, awake. And as they continue to choose this way of life, pause after pause, breath after breath, they build not just a habit, but a legacy. They turn the pause into a ritual, a sacred practice of self-respect. They do not respond to be right, they respond to be aligned. They do not act to win, they act to remain whole. And in this consistency, they find liberation. Because the one who delays reaction is not controlled by the world, they are in command of themselves. And from that place of calm command, they do not rise in rage, they rise in resolve. They walk forward, not to prove a point, but to walk in their own truth. The world may tempt them with noise, them into its chaos. But the Stoic does not flinch. They do not mirror the world's energy. They remain grounded in their own, because they know this. Every time they choose response over reaction, they are practicing freedom. Every time they hold their silence with dignity, they are building strength. Every time they act from principle, they are becoming who they were meant to be. This is not the avoidance of conflict, it is the elevation of it. It is not detachment, it is clarity. It is not coldness, it is courage. Courage to be still when the world wants you to move. Courage to be kind when the world wants you to retaliate. Courage to remain yourself when emotions try to make you someone else. That is the Stoic's path. Quiet, firm, and chosen in every moment where a pause becomes power. Keep going. Those two words, so simple, yet they carry the full weight of what it means to live with intention. The Stoic does not wait for the perfect moment, the ideal condition, or the approval of others to act. They move forward even when the path is dimly lit, even when each step feels heavier than the last. They keep going not because they are fearless, but because they have learned to walk with fear without surrendering to it. Power, in the eyes of the Stoic, is not a title, a loud declaration, or an external validation. It is persistence. It is returning to your principles again and again, even when life tempts you to abandon them. It is rising on the days you feel like lying down. It is holding on to your values when no one is watching. The Stoic understands that greatness is not forged in a single defining moment, but in the thousands of quiet choices made when no one is clapping. They do not need the crowd, they do not need a stage. They need only the next honest step. They wake up and choose discipline over ease. They choose meaning over mood. They choose to act in alignment with their inner compass, even when the wind of doubt howls loud. And every time they do, they reinforce who they are. They cast a vote, not for who the world expects them to be, but for who they have decided to become. Even in failure, even in fatigue, the Stoic doesn't collapse inward. They return to breath, to truth, to purpose. They understand that progress is not always loud. Sometimes it's a quiet refusal to quit. Sometimes it's getting back up without fanfare. Sometimes it's choosing silence over anger, clarity over confusion, movement over stagnation. They keep going because they are not seeking comfort, they are seeking transformation. They know that the greatest change does not happen on easy roads. It happens in the stretch, in the strain, in the choice to take one more step. Even if the path is uncertain, even if the results are unseen, the step is the declaration. I will not give up on myself. I will not abandon what I value just because today feels heavy. I will not retreat from my own strength. The Stoic walks with the knowledge that they have already survived so much, that they have endured storms they once thought would destroy them, that they have proven their resilience by breathing through moments that felt unbearable. That strength didn't come from the absence of struggle, it was born within it. And now, with every forward step, they do not seek ease, they seek growth. Every step, even the smallest, is sacred, because it is theirs, it is chosen, it is aligned. The Stoic is not defined by how much they shine when things are good, but by how steadily they move when everything is hard, when the road disappears, when the voices grow quiet, when hope flickers. That's when their strength is most visible, not in posture, but in perseverance. They don't run toward glory, they walk toward truth. And even if they falter, they do not abandon themselves, because they understand the power of trying again, of returning, of believing once more. In the silence of the struggle, they find a deeper voice, a steadier resolve, a quiet force that whispers, keep going, not someday, now, because this step matters, this moment counts, this effort, invisible though it may be to others, is carving something eternal inside you. And as long as you walk in truth, you are never truly lost. As long as you move with integrity, you are never without direction. You do not need the full map. You need only the will to take the next step. And that, the Stoic knows, is more than enough. Every step forward becomes part of a sacred transformation. The Stoic doesn't look back in regret or forward in anxiety. They focus on the now, not because they ignore the past or dismiss the future, but because they know the only place where strength is forged is in the present moment. To keep going, especially when no one notices, when there's no applause, no clarity, no promise of reward, that is the rarest kind of power. It is not the power of domination, it is not the power that screams. It is the quiet, enduring force of a soul aligned with its truth. The Stoic doesn't wait to feel ready. They act because it is right. They step not because the path is easy, but because the direction is meaningful. Their legs may shake, doubt may press hard, but they do not turn back. They remember that even uncertainty cannot touch a person rooted in purpose. And so they walk, not driven by urgency, but by principle. And if the voice of fear whispers, "What if?" they respond with, even then I will move. Even then I will try. Even then I will keep going, because the decision to continue is not a denial of fear. It is a declaration that fear does not own them. Each day they choose to return to what matters. Each moment they realign with their highest standard. Each breath they affirm, I may be tired, I may be unsure, but I am not done. I am not broken. I am becoming. This is the discipline that forges a character unshaken by failure and untouched by praise. It is the discipline of showing up, of choosing truth over ease, of knowing that the real prize is not perfection, but presence, not applause, but alignment, not recognition, but resilience. The Stoic does not chase proof of their worth, they build it. One choice, one pause, one act of integrity at a time. And even in the absence of external reward, they are not empty. They are full of strength, of dignity, of quiet fire. Because to walk in your own direction, to honor your values in silence, to continue when comfort calls you backward, this is the life of the deeply powerful. They do not confuse struggle with failure. They see it as the curriculum, the classroom. the place where they learn who they really are. When the path becomes difficult, they don't interpret it as a sign to stop. They recognize it as proof they're walking towards something meaningful. They've learned that all lasting transformation is earned, not granted, built, not found, practiced, not proclaimed. And that practice, repeated with faith, becomes identity, becomes direction, becomes freedom. They are not looking to arrive, they are choosing to evolve. And so they rise not once, but daily. Not for perfection, but for peace. Not because the world demands it, but because their soul does. They know now that power is not someday. Power is not something distant or conditional. It is now, in this breath, in this choice, in this step forward, even when the destination is unclear. They carry the quiet knowing, I have endured, I am enduring, and I will continue. Not because I am unbreakable, but because I refuse to stay broken. And in that refusal, they find something extraordinary. Faith, not in outcomes, but in effort. Trust, not in certainty, but in character. And strength, not in the absence of hardship, but in the decision to keep walking through it. This is the heart of the Stoic path. Not louder, not faster, not easier. Just truer, just deeper, just more aligned with the self that chooses growth over stagnation, integrity over ease, and movement over paralysis. In a world that waits for permission, they give it to themselves. In a world that seeks rescue, they become their own foundation. In a world that hesitates, they step forward, and they keep going. You don't become powerful by accident. You become powerful by walking through the fire without losing yourself, by standing alone and not shrinking, by choosing stillness when noise demands reaction, by pausing when everything in you wants to strike, by stepping forward, again and again, even when your legs tremble and the way is unclear. The Stoic path is not a path of perfection. It is the path of quiet resolve, of deliberate strength, of values lived, not just spoken. The fire that once seemed like destruction becomes your forge. The silence that once felt like exile becomes your sanctuary. The pause that once felt like hesitation becomes your source of wisdom. The step that once felt rise, not by becoming someone else, but by stripping away everything that is not truly you. You rise by uncovering the essence that was always there, resilient, grounded, awake. You are not defined by how easy the path is. You are defined by how honestly you walk it. And you do not need anyone's permission to keep going. You just need to decide, again and again, that who you are becoming matters more than what you are leaving behind. So breathe, step, rise, endure, and keep going. Not because you're already there, but because you know you're strong enough to become. That is power, that is presence, that is the Buddhist way.